So welcome back to the channel and the second part of how to modify your metering head. Now we've done the first part, now we're on to really getting the best out of your metering head. Now this metering head I've got on test now is for an engine I'm building, which is originally a KR. It's now a 1984cc head polished ABF cam, so we're needing fueling similar to what I've got on my Mark II. So we're aiming at really the sort of 190 cc's a minute. How are we going to get that much fuel out of a metering head designed for 120? Pressure and balancing, and making sure that the CO adjuster screw is set correctly. If it's not set correctly, when the air flap comes up and pushes that fuel pin up, if it's not set correctly, the fuel pin is not going high enough to let the fuel through. So that is very important to get that right. Again, there's cover it in loads of videos, it's in the manuals, all that sort of stuff. Ideally, 16 valve Mark II Golf is 19mm from where the roller is on the fuel pin to the mounting surface where the fuel metering head mounts to. Get that there, and that's pretty much where you want it. So, get on to this minute. I'll show you what the actual shim looks like. A few people commented in the last video that it's quite hard to see the shim, so I've done a little one just to explain fully on it, and I've also gone through the actual springs inside, how that works. So we're rolling with that now, and then we'll come back to this in a second. So this is a close-up of the fuel pressure regulator, and then we've got a shim here. Excuse me dirty things, but this is your 1mm shim. Pretty much looks like a washer, and all that does sits over the top, sits over on there, and obviously that gap and there is for our sealing ring. So that's the actual shim sitting on top, and that's all it does is hold spring pressure. So when the spring goes on, we have the spring in there, so obviously the more shims you have, the more that spring is being compressed, so the more pressure it takes to overcome it and divert fuel back to tank, hence more pressure. So flow adjustment, I'll start off with these bits here. So this is what does your flow adjustment. Now there's an adjustment screw that sits inside there. Now I've been asked countless times, is there a basic setting? No. There's a basic ballpark area, which is literally when you screw these into there, you put the screw in flush with its thread, screw it in 6 turns, and that puts you in an area. But I've just done that on this one, and this one was about 0.2mm higher than those two. I've left that one off for a reason, just so you can see. So you can put them all in at a set point, 6 turns in, which puts you in the ballpark, and then you need to measure the height of these to the body of that to get them all in, again, the ballpark area, which will then do its job. But what you have got is springs. There you go. That's one of the springs that sits under this cap. There. So you have a lower one of those which sits at the bottom, which rests on top or behind on the actual adjuster. So when you adjust it, it pushes the cap up, sliding up this nozzle. And then you have a spring on it and a spring cap. Now these springs, I actually did a test because that's what I like doing. I put a set weight on top of all 4 of these exact springs, a known weight, all on a flat level playing field, and measure the height of them, and they were all different to each other within 0.1, 0.2 of a mil. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you are talking about the fine tolerances in here, 0.1 of a mil is huge, considering the fuel pin itself, fuel housing, inside there is a tiny slit. That slit is 0.2 of a millimetre in, not diameter, 0.2 of a mil. That's the width of it. So that's huge measurements we're talking about. So
what I'm saying is you can adjust these to get them in the ballpark, but without actually testing them on a rig or on a car, it's very hard to get them even just by rebuilding it and setting it. Now again, plop that on there, put the cap back on there. Unfortunately, these caps haven't cleaned it very well. They've got a bit of stain, and I don't know if you can just catch the sort of lip of it. But anyway, what we're doing now, a metal diaphragm. This is disgusting and dirty. I haven't put the new one on yet. But this sits, you can see there, this is the bottom side, you can see little holes there. That makes up to the top of those. So that sits, I'll just put it at the back, it will stay there. Maybe those two, or that side. Nah, said no. Anyway, that sits on top of there. And what you have, that pushes down. And when it pushes the spring down, hopefully it stays on without pinging off, because they're quite small. That sits down there. You see that nozzle's just protruded through. When you have system pressure in the lower chamber, remember this is the top, it's upside down. The lower chamber pressure or system pressure pushes on this disc and has a force acting on here, pushing that spring down. And that goes down so far, and that little nozzle is covered by this, e.g. no fuel's getting through. And then with the spring rates, or the adjustments you have on there, when the fuel pin moves and diverts system pressure from the lower into the upper chamber, it pushes down through holes in here and comes in here. And now this is sort of works on an equilibrium. So that is a set point there. Those nozzles are actually flush with the housing itself. So when it's all closed, no pressure, they're shut. As soon as more fuel pressure comes through, the spring pressure, with that touch more fuel, the spring pressure then pushes the diaphragm away. So again, springing that up within massive exaggeration, letting the fuel go through there, through the nozzle and out to the injector.
So how do we get the pressure out? So I've got my book because I'll show you how balancing is. So this was for a stock meter and the other day, or slightly mixed. Each one of these is one set of balancing. So starting that side, all to that side, to that side. Because it's test and adjust, to test and adjust, to test and adjust. Because like I said, with springs, there is no, that is the level. You can put it to a base level, so you screw it in 6 turns all the way down the adjuster screws, and it might work, but it might not. You need to have the system pressure right, the springs and adjusting to a set level, and then work from there to get where you want to be. Now, system pressure on this one is 5.6 bar. 5.8 bar. So that's about where we want the pressure, and then we can then adjust where we're at. Now, to not delay and jabber on the video, at the moment we are at, thanks light, 1, 2, 3 and 4 cylinders always work off, because it's a 4-cylinder car. So we've got 200, 190, 190 and 210. So 190 is what we're going to aim for. That's a good ballpark where we want. Again, working out fuel delivery on these or injector flow rates is, I think I mentioned it the last one, I can't remember. It's not an exact science, because when you're calculating injector flow rates, you've got to work into account duty cycle. Now, duty cycle on an injector is the cycle the injector's open for. Obviously, K-jets, they're always open. So if you're working out a calculator, you use duty cycles 100% because it's 100% open. There's no leeway for it to be on or off, which is like modern ECUs. So 100% duty cycle is what we're working off. And then the pressure, what's behind the injectors, is your system pressure. And then that gives us our rough. It is rough because it's very hard to work out. It's not like modern injectors where you can go, right, it does that much at that time. We know the pumps on these flow a lot of fuel, but we need to try and narrow it down just to get a ballpark. Again, all this can be tweaked on your warm-up regulator, or once it's in the car, like I've done mine countless times, to get it spot on, which will be the same as this. Once this is all bolted back on there with its own warm-up regulator, we can get the car running, and then I can tweak and adjust to make sure it's doing what it should do with the lambda gauge and etc. So what we want to be doing is getting 1.4 down to 190. What you can't do is go, well, you can and you can't. Not helpful. So 1 and 4, if I drop those back down, that doesn't just adjust 1 and 4. It'll have an effect on all of them. So if I adjust number 1 cylinder, it'll have an effect on all of them. So if I anti-clockwise turn number 1 cylinder, taking away pressure from the spring, that fuel pressure is still there. It's still got to go somewhere. So it goes into these 3. Not evenly, it's not exact. So we do want to do number 1 and 4, a tweak and a tweak, off and off a little bit, and then run it again and see where the fuel's gone. So if it brings it up perfect, happy with that. I'll show you about injectors singing in a minute, but I'll change pumps over so you can hear it, because at the moment the power supply I'm using that is quite noisy. So I'll change pumps over, power supply over, and you'll be able to hear these K-injectors sing, which is what they want to do, which is the singing is the nozzle rattling, which means all of them are perfectly even. So I'll stop jabbing, I'll adjust 1 and 4, simple, on with your 3mm Allen key, on the adjusters like I've showed you in the beginning of the video, how they're screwed and adjust, tweak them off. You're only talking not even a quarter of a turn, eighth of a turn, little tiny bit. Remember, you're not looking at a lot of distance inside those springs. So do a little bit, run the test, see what it's doing. Right, so that is all balanced how I wanted it. So that's taking about 45 minutes going through that. It may end up being 1 and 4 were fine, 2 and 3 I kept having to put more on 3 and off from 2. About 4 times I had to do that till it was all level. I can't get them to do the where the injectors sing. It's quite hard because I've got a pump there and injectors there. When it's on a car and you've got the pump at the back of the car and the injector at the front, you can hear it sing. It's like a whistling noise. So that is how you can modify these, because the system pressure is so important, it makes such a difference. And then balance these. So that is a stock 60 valve meter now. I've done nothing to it apart from changing the pressures and adjusting it, and it's now flowing 195 cc's of fuel a minute per injector, which is without working it out, it's about the same as mine. So theoretically, knocking on the door 200 brake horsepower worth of fuel. Car's only doing 185, 186 brake weight horse, can't remember now. And not running lean or rich, sort of sitting where you want. So even though we got more fuel for it, the engine hasn't got the suction to actually open that flap up. It's not going to get the fuel in there. And then working in conjunction with the warm-up regulator pressure, again pushing the flap down, relevant to that pressure is whether the flap moves up and gives more fuel or not. So the last thing I'm going to show you is voltage. What's voltage got to do with it? Basic pump, you'll have 12 volts, well 12.5 volts really, at the pump. That's what you need. So I've done nothing else to this. I've got this now on a car setup. I have a workshop setup where it's quicker, slightly more power, and it keeps 14 odd volts all the time. So I know I've got a nice constant to test these, otherwise I'll be constantly charging batteries up. This is now on a car setup, which we've got 12.5 volts. So I've just done that test again. We've got the same output, 195 millilitres a minute per injector at 12.5 volts. Now I've got the LED light on. I'll leave it, I've been on about 15-20 minutes now. I'll leave it a bit longer, and I'll film this doing it, and I'll have the voltage in the corner, and you'll see how effect it has on system pressure, which will then have a knock-on effect on fuel delivery, relevant pump voltage. So 5.8 bar, terrible. 5.8 bar at 195 mils a minute at 12.5 volts. So we'll let the voltage run down, and then we'll see what system pressure drops to. And again, remember, this is your car, if you've got a poor earth or a poor power supply to the pump, that's going to have a knock-on effect on your system pressure, and that's going to have a knock-on effect on injector output. So I'll get the voltage down. So as you can see there from the voltage, it's probably not exactly, you can see the gauge has moved a bit. We dropped between much a volt, so from 12.5 to 11.5, about a volt of power. We've dropped, what was that? 0.4? Where are we at? 5.8. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, about 0.4 bar. 0.4 bar. So 1 volt is about, thanks. So give or take, obviously a bit, 1 volt is about 0.4 bar. Doesn't sound much, but when we go back to the first video on pressure, 0.4, 0.5 bar, that's like a shim, a mil shim. Mil shim being what? 0.6 mil? No, half. Come on, you have to watch the video again. But 0.4 of a bar is a lot of pressure to lose. That will have a knock-on effect on your injector outputs. So yeah, that is how you modify your metering head. So mainly system pressure. Your CO2 adjuster screw, make sure it is bang on where it wants to be, because that has a huge effect on the outputs. Obviously, like I say, more air going in, fuel pin goes up, more fuel goes out. And then balancing it. Now, balancing it is not a dark art. I've had so many people comment these videos thanking me for doing them in a way. The only reason I started doing this is because I asked another UK-based company a couple of questions about, I think it was appliances, something bone really, nothing too in depth, and I was literally can't really answer, but I was shot down, and it was pretty much send us and we'll do it. I was like, well, no, that's not happening. So now we deal with this, and I do it for lots of other people. Can't remember the amount of metering heads I've rebuilt, warm up regulators I've rebuilt, and I'll continue to do so, and I'll continue to share all this information so you guys out there and girls can test and fix your own cars, because why would you want to take it somewhere else if you've got the ability to do it by watching a video and checking stuff, to do it yourself? More self-pride, you've done it yourself, you've got the car running, or you fixed that problem for a 20p O-ring. So yeah, that's the end of this video. Again, links in the description. Obviously I've got a Patreon channel and membership channel. Patrons just supporting me. The more I can do, obviously time is money at the moment. I've got to work, I've got to do videos, I'm a husband, I'm a father, I've got loads of stuff that I'm doing. So I've got those running, and also, like I say, affiliated with e-manuals online, all the specs and stuff and things I get of this, and just how it works. If you want to know how things work, have a manual in front of you, and then have a bit of component in front of you and go, oh yeah, that's how it works. I learn with my hands. I think that's the best way. But it's always good to be backed up with technical ability, or technical publications. Not doing very good English today, am I? So yeah, that's all. I'll quit jabbering. Next video is CISE. What's that? It is a pain in the... I can do them. It takes a lot of time. And they're a nightmare. They're upside down, they're back to front. You check the system pressures the wrong way. It doesn't work on a fuel pin with the fuel coming out. But I'll go into that. I've had, again, over the months, years, I've had a lot of people ask me about those. I'll point them that way because I've got a rig set up I showed in the last video. So I'll get it on here and I'll test it, and I'll show you how to do system pressure on that, which will be a bit of relief to a lot of people, especially in, I say, foreign countries, different countries like Croatia, Spain, Finland, America, who run that kind of CISE stuff. Didn't really get much of it in the UK. Most of it was emissions based in Europe. So look forward to that one. If you haven't already, click subscribe. Really helps me out. Always happy to answer questions, comments. Just let us know. Cheers for watching. Bye.
I'ma keep it cool. With you I feel like breaking rules. On the edge, looking out with no parachute. You know I'm dreaming about us too.